Yoga is a very popular activity throughout the world. Its popularity is constantly growing. In the US, the number of practitioners increased from 15.8 million in 2008 to 36.7 million in 2016. In 1988, I did a gap year after high school. I travelled across India for several months. I was 17 years old. I didn't know much about the country, nor about the yogis' traditions.
What's your name?
Jim. A group of sadhus was camped in the valley, waiting to climb the mountain for the pilgrimage to the Amarnath cave.
30 rupees. The English boy is back.
I have been to the village. I have brought you fruits and vegetables.
Milk?
Milk? No, I didn't get any.
Never mind. Perhaps you'll go back to the village tomorrow. Sit down with us.
It was the first time I'd met holy men. Their lifestyle fascinated me immediately. Milk! Back in England, I began studying Sanskrit. Since then, I have spent long periods in India every year. I would alternate these wandering months on the road with other periods in Oxford for my academic studies. During those journeys, I spent more and more time with the ascetics. They are the heirs of the millennia-old tradition of Indian yoga. How were their practices born? Where did their life choices come from? My interest in their world never ceased to increase. I wanted to trace its history, to discover its deepest roots. In 1992, I was initiated and entered a yogi sect called the Tyagis. All in all, I must have spent more or less 12 years in India. I spent most of the time hanging around with my guru and other sadhus. In pilgrimage from one ashram to another, from one temple to another. My guru turned out to be the perfect guide for discovering this country that I loved since my first trip there. To continue my studies, I decided to investigate their world using my language skills. The only texts in Sanskrit about the ascetics were those concerning Hatha Yoga. Despite the importance of yoga for understanding the religious and cultural history of India, very little serious study had been carried out on those texts. I needed to create a bibliography, to retrieve ancient manuscripts whose preservation was in grave danger, to gather them, to compare them, to translate them, to publish critical editions. In this way, after a few years, the HYP was born, the Hatha Yoga Project. To carry on the philological analysis of the texts, particularly those dating from the 15th century on, I asked for the help of 3 researchers, Jason Birch, Mark Singleton, and Vishwanath Gupta. Today, I can't spend such extensive amounts of time per year in India. I have too many responsibilities back in England. Big responsibilities. Ring, ring. Ah.
Hi, James.
Welcome, Daniela. During her studies, Daniela Bevilacqua frequented Indian ascetics over a long period of time. I asked her to join the team of the HYP to carry out ethnographic research.
How is it going with the translations?
Fine. We received some new manuscripts from the Jodhpur Fort Library. I am working on the Dattatreya Yoga Shastra. There are only 7 existing manuscripts. We have them all. It's a text from the 13th century, the first one in which Hatha Yoga was ever named. Sometimes I'll spend more than 15 minutes translating a single word.
It must be exciting to find evidence of ascetics practices in the ancient text. You have perused them for such a long time.
At times, yes, it's a great satisfaction.
The wandering yogi and the library mouse, I can't imagine 2 worlds more different.
Well, I believe that for me they are like 2 sides of the same coin. Each of these two aspects has always fed my interest in the other. And you're about to leave?
Next week, the first stop will be the Kumbh Mela in Ujjain.
And then crisscrossing India on the lookout for traditional yogis?
Yes, I already have some contacts of people that I have to pay a visit to.
I'll join you in 3 months in Gujarat.
The heirs of the first practitioners of yoga are the ascetics who abdicated material life and lived in celibacy. Renouncing any sexual activity is central in the life of an ascetic. The garment symbolizing this choice is the loincloth.
I have only one loincloth. Do you know the story of the yogi who had 2 of them? He used to change it after bathing, and he used to put the loincloth in his cave, but mice came to nibble it. So he got a cat. But the cat needed milk. So he bought a cow. But the cow had to be milked, so the guru took on a shepherdess, but she needed to be taken care of too. So he ended up marrying her.
It wasn't easy to approach this Baba. It took me some time to win his trust and little by little to question him about Hatha Yoga.
It is the firm intention to achieve a purpose. You are a researcher. Let's say that you do everything you can to become a professor. You focus all your energy on achieving that purpose, without worrying what other people might say about you. You do all you can to achieve your goal, and you won't let go until you've reached it. This is Hatha.
When this unshakable behavior is applied to the religious field, great rewards and powers can be achieved. The first texts that speak of Hatha Yoga mainly describe methods for controlling vital energy. This energy drips down from the head and disperses through the fire of the stomach, or ejaculation. One of the techniques taught for avoiding the waste of this energy is the headstand. Dharamnath was a very well-known yogi of the Gujarat region. His story dates from perhaps the 12th century. The story says that he stayed in this position for 12 years, with his eyes closed. Then, one day, he opened them. The ray of light that sprang out dried up the sea, creating this, an immense salted desert called the Rann of Kutch. In the Gujarat region, there are still yogis of the lineage of Dharamnath. One of them, during the 4 warmest months of the year, practices the headstand for an hour and a quarter each day. In this way, he emulates the ancient guru. To accumulate tapas, ascetic power, or to produce the vision of the divinity, the most radical techniques are, according to the yogis, almost the most efficient, like the Dhuni tap. The Kumbh Mela is the occasion for witnessing these demonstrations. The Dhuni tap takes place in the warmest hours of the warmer season. The Baba meditates surrounded by batteries of burning dung. The learning of this austerity lasts 18 years, passing through different stages of gradual difficulty. The practice terminates with a series of asanas that are more complex and dynamic yoga positions. It happens quite often that someone loses balance and falls among the burning dung. I forgot to say that in India, in the warmer season, the temperature can reach 45 degrees. But the Dhuni tap is a piece of cake compared with what Puran Puri did in the 18th century. He ran away from home and became a wandering yogi at the age of 9. 2 years later, he heard an assembly discussing austerities an ascetic might undertake. One was the 84 postures of yoga, another was the posture of the Akashmuni,
which is fixing one's regard towards heaven and never looking towards earth. Another one is holding both arms in the air for the rest of one's life.
This is the one Puran Puri chose to do. While in this position, Puran Puri did not sit and beg. he traveled across India, sailing to Malaysia and the Arabian Peninsula. He reached Moscow, where he was overwhelmed by the crowds that had gathered to see him. He came back passing through Central Asia, Nepal and Tibet. He finally ended up in Calcutta after a trip that had lasted 30 years. Today, the ascetics that impose upon themselves this type of self-mortification are rare, and they do it only with one arm. Before leaving to Gujarat to meet James, I came to visit Kamalgiri. He is a standing Baba.
If the sadhus don't make tapas, the world cannot function. I have to be strict on my decision.
He has not sat down in 3 years. How long will you keep doing these tapas?
Until Lord Shiva reveals himself to me.
The meaning of Hatha Yoga in the text is slightly different from the ascetics' interpretation.
Do you mean less radical?
The practices described in the text are less extreme than the body mortifications that Puri inflicted upon himself. The texts insist on the efficacy of yoga to heal the body when it is sick and to get spiritual benefits when it is in good health.
That is the tradition from which modern yoga has developed and spread in the Western world.
The yoga practiced in the West is mainly focused on the asanas. It is practiced for its physical benefits, where the goal is to be in good shape.
For the ascetics, the asanas seem to have marginal importance. The exercises aim to shape the body and allow it to maintain a stable and comfortable position while sitting still, legs crossed and meditating for many hours.
Or for days. To a large extent, the life of a sadhu can be summed this way, sitting around the sacred fire. It's quite boring, to be honest. But Anupnath is a true virtuoso of the asanas. He's better known as Yogi Baba. I first met him some years ago at a Himalayan monastery. He agreed to show us his skills. I can't keep this up. Imagine techno music.
Yes.
At the end of the demonstration, Yogi Baba consulted his smartphone and asked Daniela if she was famous.
No, I am a researcher.
How did you learn these asanas, Yogi Baba?
They were directly transmitted to me by the Guru Goraknath, the Guru of the 12th century that founded the order to which Yogi Baba belongs.
It was a very impressive demonstration. Some of the asanas that he showed us were not traditional at all.
I don't believe that Goraknath, he probably saw them on the internet.
Yoga has been exported all over the world. The developments that it has gone through in the West are modifying its practice here in India as well. With this contamination phenomenon, it will become more and more difficult to find traces of the original yoga.
The study of the texts shows that the practice of yoga has always evolved over time. And one thing is certain, yoga remains in transformation. Babaji, how can we be sure that one day we will reach our purpose?
The wise one who is endowed with faith and constantly devoted to the practice of Hatha Yoga will be successful. But there is no such thing as certitude. Only divine grace can bestow final liberation.
We cannot cross the river here. What are we going to do? Babaji, down there, a bridge. Down there. Babaji.
That is not our direction.